All right, Lab 7 is genetic diversity and human variation, and you're going to want to read this in your book. Genetics is incredibly difficult to understand a lot of times because it has so many different variations. So it has to do with physical and physical characteristics and genetic characteristics. So we take both into consideration and we have you do a chart. And then at the very end, we'll have you basically make a baby from you and a partner that you've decided to choose the facial features and things of that person. So print out your lab directions and print out your lab answer sheet. In the past, if you haven't printed them out before, this is the one that you really want to print out the answer sheet because it's one of those that it's difficult to just type it in while you're working on the computer. So what you want to do is read thoroughly the lab, and there is a website that will be highlighted at the top of this page, and it's this blue website. You're going to want to go to this website because it specifically shows you the traits of your mouth shape, your chin shape, your head shape, and you want to determine what your head shape is and your characteristics and facial features on your answer sheet. So the first chart is all about you, basically, and the second chart is going to be about the baby that you're going to make with the partner that you've decided to have. So what you want to do is, for your face shape, there's going to be a big R or a little r, or two big R's or two little R's. So there's 3 different variations that you can have for this, and you need to go by the website. There is no way that you can determine this without going to the website. So you're going to go through and you're going to fill out the chart for yourself, and that's what is your facial features. So your face shape is round or square or something, you know, there's different facial features, and you want to put down your face is round, that you have big R, and your partner, whoever you choose, is going to want to, you're going to want to put their facial features as well. So if you don't have them next to you, you want to grab like a picture of them and go through the website and determine your phenotypes and your partner's phenotypes and write them in these columns. Okay, and then you want to determine the genotype, because with the phenotype it'll tell you exactly what genotype you are. You're either going to be dominant or recessive, and you're going to want to put this in the chart as well, because these columns are really what you're going to be looking at when you go to the next page to make the baby. So to do the baby, you're going to take your partner's information and your genotype, so your partner, yours and your partner's, put it all down there. These are all going to be like RR, little r, big R, small s, small, you know, big S, little s, whatever it tells you through the website to put on there. And then you're going to combine yours to see if you have big R and your partner has big R, little r, then you go to the genotype of the baby and you see that the big R comes from you and another big R comes from the partner. So that leaves the genotype of the baby big R. And that determines on the website that you looked at before if you have a round face, a square face, or anything like that. So you're going to want to go through and figure out the phenotype for your baby. After you're completed with both those charts, you're going to answer these 5 questions that we've decided for you. Compare and contrast gene and an allele. So we want you to kind of look both the definitions up in the back of the book and compare and contrast them. We want to see a comparison and we want to see a difference between them. Okay, and just put that down. We want you to compare and contrast what segregation and independent assortment as they apply to Mendelian principle of genetics. So you're going to want to read the chapter in your book on genetics and Mendelian genetics specifically, and you're going to decide based on the vocabulary words and what their definitions are, what segregation and independent assortment are. Okay, then we want you to, from the characteristics in this exercise, You will find the parents are heterozygous. What is the probability that both parents will contribute a recessive allele for any given trait? Justify your answer. If parents are heterozygous, that means, for instance, they have big R, little r, and both parents have big R, little r. And so doing a Punnett square or a chi square, you would determine that what the probability and the ratio is. And I believe there's an example in your book of the chi square for you to do. Okay, so you're going to want to write that one down and as soon as you determine the probability, and then justify your answer. Reading in the chapter will tell you exactly why you answered it that way because of the probability. Then we want you to compare and contrast what a genotype and a phenotype is. And I always remember this by genotype is the gene, and phenotype is the physical attribute that you actually, physically characteristic that shows up. So even though my genotype could be, you know, recessive dominant or something where my physical characteristic comes up dominant, you know, so you're going to want to determine what the difference between the two of them are. So go through the vocabulary words and determine the difference and the comparison as well. Then you're going to go back to your child's data sheet and you're going to find out how many are recessive and how many are dominant genes. How many on this chart do you have big R, big R? How many do you have a big R and a little r? So you want to go through and determine how many, what numbers specifically you have. You might end up with 12 out of 14 or something like that. 12 to, I guess there's 29 of them here, and a couple of them you skip. So you might end up with 12 recessives and 10, you know, 10 dominants, and you want to write down what the ratio of dominant to recessive traits are. So if you have 14 down the list are dominants, so you would write down 14 dominant, and if you had 13 down the list that were recessive, you'd write down 13 recessive, and then you determine a ratio based on that, and the book really does explain that too. If you have any questions, you can call me, and you can post on the forum as well. And that should complete your lab 7.